Quiet on the set, please.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
And action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Welcome, everyone, to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign, the podcast where we uncover those hidden stories and enduring legacies of classic cinema. We are so excited in this episode because we're honored to welcome award-winning actor, singer, songwriter, record producer, and screenwriter Michelle Holmes, whose own remarkable career is part of a rich Hollywood lineage, which we're going to get to. Michelle holds degrees in theater and acting from Northwestern University and UCLA, two powerhouse schools, and has appeared on stage in numerous plays and musicals in Los Angeles, where I have seen her many times, Chicago, and elsewhere. As a recording artist, she was the songwriter, bass player, and producer for the LA indie bands Crazy Aunt Mary and Mo Jones. You can find their music on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify. Michelle is also a member of the Recording Academy. She has several films and TV series to her credit. You can currently see her on Amazon and Tubi in the series Middlehood, and her feature film So Far and From Now On will be coming out 2026.
Michelle joins us to share the fascinating story of her family. Now, when we think about the great acting family dynasties of old Hollywood, of course, we think about the Barrymores.
Right,
we think about the Carradines. We think about the Fondas. Michelle is part of another acting dynasty that may not be as familiar, but is every bit as interesting. Today, she'll be talking about her own family, beginning with her grandfather's cousin, prolific character actor Taylor Holmes, and continuing through his talented children. Phillips Holmes, a leading man of the early 1930s, MADELEINE Taylor Holmes, a gifted character performer in her own right, and actor Rafe Holmes, whose promise was tragically cut short. Together, we'll explore how the Holmes family helped shape the golden age of Hollywood and how their influence still lingers today. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I have been listening to you since episode 1.
Wow. Thank you.
Yes, and I have seen Nan in many a show, and she is currently in a show that is fabulous. She is wonderful. Anthropology.
Because you guys go back a ways, don't you?
We do. We met at a law firm in downtown LA back in the days when we were using law firms for our day jobs. And they were
I did that.
It was such a you did too?
I
Yes.
did. Yes, I did.
It was such a wonderful way to be able to leave work and come back for auditions.
We're so excited to have you here. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while, because you come from this acting family that really made an impact in not only film and TV, but also the Broadway stage. So let's just start with the patriarch of your family, Taylor Holmes.
Right.
He's an actor I just love. I mean, he could play upstanding citizens, he could play authority figures, he could play fathers, but my favorite, he could play shady men with sort of a dark side and maybe compromised moral compass, shall we say. And he was so good at that. So just talking about Taylor Holmes, what can you tell us about his background?
I think there's something to be said for people who were born at a certain time, that if they weren't famous, there isn't a lot known about them. I know that he was born in New Jersey in 1878.
Right.
He was 12 years older than my grandfather. And he's done like over 100 Broadway shows, directed in them as well. He got really famous for Ruggles of Red Gap on Broadway. Was like his most famous role that then was carried over to Hollywood. But he was Rosencrantz in Hamlet.
Yeah.
And as we know, that's not a very big part.
Yes. Right.
It's like what Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Yes.
Stoppard wrote that play because they don't last very long in Hamlet.
True.
So anyway,
Paying his dues.
Right. I have found that when TV shows, because I didn't see a lot of those either because I was too young.
Right.
But YouTube has everything.
It does.
That is the beauty of YouTube. You can find it. Yes.
Right. I have found some stuff on there that I didn't know even existed.
Well, his first love being the stage. One of the things that I was looking up about him on IMDb is his debut was in a really controversial play in 1900 called Sappho. Right. Yeah. Can you talk about that? Why was the play controversial and what happened?
Well, the woman who is the producer, Olga Nethersole, got them to produce on Broadway. And it was written by Clyde Fitch. Now, does that name mean anything to you?
No, actually, no.
There is a quote from All About Eve, and I'm going to paraphrase, where they've had the party where Bill Sampson has come back from Hollywood, and he's not gone upstairs to see Margot. He's chatting with Eve. Margot comes down, finds that they've been chatting together, and he hasn't come up to see her, and is jealous, is mad, whatever you want to call it. And so he accuses her little snits of being something out of a Clyde Fitch play. And she says, Clyde Fitch was way before my time. I am paraphrasing there. I have
That's
exact
funny.
I remember
quote
that
here.
line now.
Yes, so
Yes.
Clyde Fitch, yes,
Oh,
he was
wow.
prominent in All About Eve. But anyway, Sappho, so Olga produced it, and here was the issue. It was a play that had a Parisian courtesan, and it showed her taking a man upstairs to culminate the relationship, even though that's not seen. And it's not that they didn't have other courtesan plays. However, Olga was also the producer, and women didn't produce theater at that time. So they wanted to make an example of her
Oh, interesting.
for having this highly sexualized play and producing it, not only starring in it, but producing it. Taylor played Deportee, who was a composer in love with, I think, one of her women. And so, you know, it was that kind of play. So what they did was, they took her to court. And while they were in court, they threw a couple of other different plays up while Sappho was down. You know, they had the
They had the
repertory.
space.
Got
Yeah.
a theater to fill. So.
Yeah. So long story short, she was acquitted. The jury said, no, you know, there's nothing about this that's so much worse than anything else.
Right.
And but they were just trying to make an example of women. And this play and this trial and her doing this really started to change the Victorian mores that had carried over
Right.
into America. So this was like, it
Kind of
didn't
a
change it
turning point.
overnight, but it was
Yeah.
it was an impetus toward that.
Right.
So that's the Sappho story.
And probably a woman who's perpetuating sexualized characters was just
absolutely.
a no-no back
Oh, no,
then.
no, no.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed
In
to
that
like
time
it.
period,
No.
for sure.
Well, you know, one thing, when Taylor was appearing on Broadway, he was in a production of The Honorable John Grisby, which I believe he played John Grisby in 1902, and he met actress Edna Phillips,
Right.
who was also appearing in the play, and they fell in love.
Right.
They were
She
married.
was from Quebec.
Yes, yes. What can you tell us about Edna and her career, their early relationship, all that good stuff? I did a little search
Did you,
too.
Maybe you.
I didn't find
yeah,
much
Edna,
on
not
her.
much about Edna. It seems that they were a really beloved Broadway couple. I mean, the theater
That would make
The
sense,
theater
yeah.
community loved them in New York, and they always maintained an apartment on East 66th. This will come in play later. And so she did, I think, 7 shows on Broadway. He did, as I said, over 100. Fell in love, moved to the West Coast so that he could start doing some film. I think she did Ruggles of Red Gap with him. I think there was another film she did with him as well. A lot of those silent films have been lost.
Yes.
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 So when she got pregnant and was going to have her baby, her first one, they wanted to have it back in New York because those were their people and that was their community. Well, Phillips, as he became called, had other ideas and showed up at Grand Rapids, Michigan, as they were traveling to New York because they wanted it to be a big reveal, you know, like theater people would do, you know.
Of course, exactly. Here's the baby.
Right, and named him Phillips because her last name was Phillips, which was quite common, like Humphrey Bogart. His mother's name was Humphrey. Tandy Cronin, Patty LuPone, you might not
Yeah,
know. Her
that's
mother's name is Patty. Creighton Cheney,
Right.
John Cheney
Yeah.
Jr. So I think that she pretty much devoted herself to being
A mom.
Taylor's support and
Well, one
wife
thing
and
I
mom.
did notice just in my research with her,
Sure.
like most of her Broadway plays and certainly most of her movies, they were productions with him.
Right.
So she came
meant-
along
right.
with
She was
him. Yeah.
Part of the
definitely
package.
support.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
support.
While Taylor was still in New York, he recorded a spoken word version of Rudyard Kipling's poem Boots in 1915. Just a side note, I
Wow.
remember this
Yes.
as being very humorously used in the Kaufman and Hart play Once in a Lifetime. And it's the young ingenue who gets up and she's trying to prove that she's this great actress. And she gets up and she goes, boots, boots, boots. And it's
But it's not his
hysterical.
recording. It's the
It's
poem.
not his
It's the
recording.
poem.
And during the day, people would know that poem very well.
Sure.
Nowadays, people don't know it as well. But the version of Taylor's was used in a very unusual way. Can you tell us about that?
They were trying to break down the recruits to psychologically see if they could handle being the monotony and
being captured.
Yes,
I heard.
yes, and they don't use it anymore. But there are men who heard it, who were it was used against them, who once they got out of the service couldn't listen to it anymore. They were so traumatized by it.
Wow.
But now the funny thing is, I knew nothing about it.
Okay.
I had never heard of it, anything. And I'm a Cillian Murphy fan.
Yes.
And I knew he had done the 28 days, 28 months, 28 weeks, all of the 28 movies. And I saw 28 years later, and I thought, I have no idea what any of this is about. Let me see. And so I'm watching the trailer on YouTube, and this voice comes on, boots, 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 boots. And then I don't have it memorized, so I'm not keep going. But he gets hysterical, really hysterical at the end. And it builds. It's really slow.
It's profound.
It is.
It is profound.
It's to show what it's like. I mean, the infantry, what it does to these men that had to go over. And I thought, this is creepy. Who is this?
It is
but I never
creepy.
thought about it. And then I was doing Taylor research, and I went, that was Taylor Holmes.
Wow.
Your
I know, but the
relative.
repetitiveness, relentlessness of it,
Yes.
I could see how it would get into your psyche.
I think it's the thing he's probably most famous for now, thanks to 28 years later. I mean, I think that there are certainly movies that he's done that have been seen by that many people.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But
But the popular culture.
right
for
now,
sure.
right
Yeah, they
now,
know this,
he
yeah.
would. Who would think? That goes to show you. You know, you can record things or film things, and suddenly I can do a song. And, 50 years from now, I could be gone and bye-bye, and suddenly the song means something to somebody.
Yes.
And, so
Absolutely.
It's the beauty of art, isn't
Yeah.
it?
That's why the theater is so
ephemeral.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's wonderful, too.
it is in a different way. Yeah, in a different way.
Absolutely. After a lot of success on Broadway, of course, which usually happened a lot with Broadway performers, Hollywood comes a-courting, and Taylor goes out to the West Coast to try his luck in movies. And I think this was maybe around 1916 that he moved out there, and he made his feature film debut in 1917 in the lead role of the silent film Fool for Luck, which was a comedy drama about a man obsessed with superstition. Now, what was that transition like for the family going from New York to Los Angeles?
Well, the family was just he and Edna, as far as I can tell. So
At that point.
yes,
to have the baby.
to give birth to their first child. I think it was probably fine, fun, and and he made a lot of silent films.
I know. Can you talk about maybe some of his early silent films?
Well, as I said, the one I'm the most familiar with is Ruggles of Red Gap, because he did it on Broadway, and then they had him play it in silent films. When they did it, the talkies, Charles Laughton played the part. They didn't give it to Taylor. I guess maybe Taylor was too old, or Charles Laughton had more clout, or who knows what. What I can tell you about it is a lot of those films are just lost to
bad.
time.
Yeah.
So-
well, and clearly he was one of those fortunate actors, having started on Broadway, that he could make the transition so beautifully from silence to talkies.
Right, for sure. Had a beautiful voice.
Eventually, he transitioned from this leading man into a well-respected and highly sought-after character actor. Can you talk about some of your favorite films that he did?
No, I loved a lot of them. We were talking earlier about Kiss of Death.
Yes.
Playing Earl Hauser,
Love
being this smarmy lawyer who promises Victor Mature that he's going to get him out. He never does. He says, as long as you don't talk, he's like the mob boss. You never really see the big mob people, but you know that Tommy Udo, Richard Widmark playing that, was sort of their representative, if you will. He carried the mob's wishes out. And Taylor would talk to them and then get Tommy Udo to do their bidding, basically. He was not so nice. I was watching it today, and him talking to Victor Mature, how he would go from serious to just smarmy smile and back. I mean, he transitioned very well, very convincingly. And so that, I like him in Father of the Bride.
Oh, yeah.
He has a small part in that.
Yes.
But he makes fun of poor
fun.
Spencer Tracy and Spencer Tracy's woes over this wedding that's happening. My favorite is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. And the reason I like that is because of his interaction with Marilyn Monroe.
Yes.
And it's not just that it's Marilyn Monroe, but it's all the time Gus, and her name is Lorelei. And she's in love with Gus, the wealthy boy, who's kind of plain looking with the glasses, but she loves him anyway.
Was it Tommy Noonan? Was that who played
Yes,
him?
that's Tommy
Who was
Noonan. Thank you. Tommy Noonan was everywhere.
Yes, he was.
He was one of those people like, I've seen him before, but people don't know his name. But he was worried about Lorelei meeting his father, because he didn't think, who was Taylor Holmes, didn't think the father would approve of her, which he did not. And
for good cause.
Right. Well, he didn't quite believe that Lorelei wanted to marry Gus for him.
Right,
yes,
right.
just for his money. And he says, I know you just want to marry my son for his money. He goes, no, I don't want to marry Gus for his money. I want to marry Gus for your money. And he's like, what?
It's one of the greatest lines in the movie.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that line.
It is a great line. And so then she explains, if a girl is pretty and you love her anyway, but isn't it nice if she's pretty too? And if a guy has money, you may love him, but isn't it nice? And she goes, if you had a daughter, wouldn't you want her to have nice things when she got married? Why is it wrong for me to want those things?
Right.
And he goes, say, they told me you were dumb. And she goes, I can be smart when I need to. I'm paraphrasing.
Exactly.
So I love that exchange between them.
I love that. I know,
So-
great chemistry. Well, the movie I have to talk about, and
Sure.
it's the first movie I ever saw him in, and I just fell in love with him, was Nightmare Alley.
Oh, Nightmare Alley,
Where
of course.
he plays the
Right,
gullible
right.
millionaire
Absolutely.
who's basically bamboozled
Absolutely.
by Tyrone Power's
Thank you.
fraudulent,
Yes.
mentalist.
Yes.
And that movie is so spectacular.
Yes,
and he's
it is.
so good.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that one?
I just love, again, it's a different character
Yeah.
than you've seen him
Yep.
play.
You have such sympathy for him.
And it's
Yes.
a good-sized role. And, yeah, I just think to have him be duped like that.
Oh, he's
but
so
then,
vulnerable
I
and
know, so
sweet.
vulnerable,
Yes.
I know. Then not.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is amazing that what he could play. He really
Right.
could
Oh,
play.
he was in St. Joan.
Joan of Arc, yeah.
Joan of Arc.
That's right.
With Bergman, and
Yeah.
he played the Archbishop, one of the not nice guys questioning her.
Yes, yes.
About her
None of them
her
were very
beliefs.
nice.
Yeah. But he was one of the religious hierarchy that were really just politicos, you know.
Yeah. Before we continue with Taylor's transition into TV and, of course, the other famous Holmeses, it's time for this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
And the pop quiz question today is, Taylor Holmes' final movie role was as the voice of King Stephen in the animated classic Sleeping Beauty from 1959. We all love it. He was actually a last-minute replacement for another actor. Who was the actor and why was he replaced?
Ooh, that's a great question. I do not know the answer.
I'll bet Michelle does.
I did, but now I'm blanking on it. I'll Google it.
We will be back with that and more about the Holmes dynasty after this.
Steve and Ann will be right back, but first another stop on the Hollywood tour. All right, Steve mentioned the Barrymores are another famous acting dynasty. Siblings John, Ethel, and Lionel became known as the Royal Family of Broadway. But they were actually the third generation of the acting clan that began with the famous Drew family. See, the Barrymores' grandmother was Louisa Lane, who began her stage career at the age of only 8. She later married the Irish comic actor John Drew, and then she went on to manage Mrs. John Drew's Arch Street Theater Company. They were a successful repertory theater in Philadelphia for over 30 years. Now, John and Louisa's son, John Drew Jr., made his debut at his mother's theater, as did their daughter, Georgiana Emma Drew. Georgiana married actor Maurice Barrymore and then gave birth to 3 children, Lionel, Ethel, and John Barrymore. Now, John is arguably the most famous of the 3, but amazingly, he was never nominated for an Academy Award. Lionel won for Best Actor for A Free Soul in 1931, and Ethel won for Best Supporting Actress for None But the Lonely Heart in 1945. All 3 appeared together in just one film, that was 1932's Rasputin and the Empress. So when it comes to the Barrymores, the expression, acting is in my blood, is no exaggeration. And now back to Steve and Ann from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Welcome back, everybody. We're so excited. We have a very special guest with us, Michelle Holmes. She's here talking about her family, the Holmes clan. But before we get into that further, I want to give a shout out to our listener of the week. And this week we are honoring Brenda Ashworth, who has been a supporter for quite a while. And she actually sent us over a really funny clip of fashion designer Stan Herman talking about the very first time he met his childhood crush, Anne Rutherford.
Oh.
It's hilarious. hilarious, and it's so very Anne Rutherford. So anyway, Brenda, thank you so much for being a supporter and also for sending that great clip.
Thank you, Brenda. Well, when we left off, we were talking about Taylor Holmes' transition into television. He did quite a bit of television, looking at IMDb, and he debuted in a 1949 TV movie adaptation of A Christmas Carol, but they called it The Christmas Carol, which is so interesting. He played Ebenezer Scrooge. I think Vincent Price was the narrator.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, I know you've looked at some things on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, I did not see that, but I thought it was perfect for him.
Yes,
I just could imagine it. Totally cool.
Yeah.
Again, looking at the list of his television credits, he did the Loretta Young Show.
Yes.
Which also Madeline, his daughter, did. But again, his television, it just shows how prolific
Yes.
that he was. The television shows that he was in were even before my time.
Yeah.
So I did see that he was living with Madeline when he passed away. He was living with her in Beverly Hills at their
Okay.
house, which was shortly after King Stephen.
Right. He was the voice of King Stephen in Sleeping Beauty.
So they had re-released it in the aughts. My husband is involved in animation art, and so we went to see the re-release of Sleeping Beauty. People knew that it was like a closed group of people, but it was at the El Capitan. It was a big deal. And nobody made a fuss over me, but people knew that King Stephen was my great uncle.
Okay.
So we leave the theater, and I walk out very impressed. And then I was looking at the Walk of Fame and then walking around. And I think to myself, I wonder if Phillips has a star. I look down, I'm standing on it.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Yes. So,
There-
woo!
yeah.
I love that. Well, speaking of Phillips,
Yeah.
let's get into him a little bit. Their firstborn child, as we talked about, Phillips Holmes, he followed in his father's footsteps, and he really made a mark in films.
But he didn't plan on it.
Well, that's interesting. Tell us about that.
He didn't want to do it. When he was little, I think he did a couple things, as a kid, just with them in a silent or something or on stage. Though he doesn't have any Broadway credits. Even Rafe has Broadway credits.
Yes.
But he and Madeline have no Broadway credits.
Well, he was beautifully educated.
Yes, he went to Cambridge in England, and he went to Princeton, and he wanted no part of show business or
Really?
as being an actor, yeah.
Wow.
And so he was going to be a stockbroker and work on Wall Street. That was his plan.
Oh, wow.
And so when he was at Princeton, they came there to shoot the movie Varsity. And they were looking for somebody in the crowd, a student in the crowd, to be in it, to be the roommate of the main character, so it would look authentic. And they picked Phillips, of all people.
Of course they
Of course
did.
they. Well,
Yeah.
he was so beautiful.
He was a stunning looking man.
Yeah, he really was. So they got him the bug. And so he didn't graduate from Princeton, and he went to Hollywood.
Okay.
And then fought for the roles just like every other pretty boy. But he was good, and he stuck with it and started working. It's funny, I have to say, I was doing a show at the Globe Playhouse in
Yes,
Hollywood.
sure.
I was
Yeah.
doing The Double Dealer. And the man who played my brother, I was in my 30s, and I had recently found out I was related to Phillips. And the man who was playing my brother was in his 70s. So I happened to mention, oh, by the way, I'm related to Phillips Holmes. And he goes, oh, Phillips Holmes. And he literally
wow.
swooned. That's how people felt about him and how
Yes.
good looking he was. Some of the things they said, he was Bachelor of Hearts. They did an article about him that he didn't think that movie stars should get married. He did like 40 films, and his career ended in 38. So you realize how many films
He was doing per
talking
year.
films
Yeah.
he did between 1929 and 1938.
They cranked them out back then.
Well, he says in the article that you have to be at set early. Sometimes you have to stay overnight, or they start shooting overnight, or they have you shoot another film at the same time across town, or they have a car that picks you up and then they fly you to New York. And he says you can't spend any time with your wife. Is basically so he felt you can't do it.
Yeah.
He says, Phil Holmes, the most sought-after young man in the movies, explains why a screen contract is the only kind he's signing. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
There's an article that says, Phillips Holmes, too beautiful. May Clark says, Phil I loved dearly, but he was too beautiful to be in love with. You'd really get hurt. I knew that.
Oh, wow.
And then Jack Oakey told him he saw him and he thought he was Carol Lombard.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of his more memorable films. Can we start with An American Tragedy, 1931, directed by Joseph von Sternberg, where he takes on the role that was later made famous by Montgomery Clift. Talk about another
Who ties in
gorgeous.
a little bit later.
Yes. This is the film that A Place in the Sun is the remake of. Then, of course, there's Broken Lullaby, 1932.
That was when I first saw him with Lionel Barrymore.
Yes.
But he worked with everybody, with Lionel and John, and there's Boris Karloff, Walter Houston, and we talked about Loretta Young.
Yes.
Because my mother looks like Loretta Young, so when I see pictures of the two of them together, it creeps me out because it looks like my mother and my brother are having a moment. But he worked with everybody.
Yeah.
He did a film called The Secret of Madame Blanche. It had a little bit of a Camille-ishness about it. He is in this with Irene Dunn, and he plays her beautiful lover boyfriend at the very beginning. I like that one. He was screen tested for Ashley Wilkes. Did not get it. Someone mused that they wish they had cast him. He might be alive.
Oh.
But anyway, I know it wasn't meant to be.
He did a great job in that screen test.
He really did.
That is amazing.
I thought
yeah.
he was wonderful.
The ones I love him in, I loved him in Dinner at 8. Tell us about that.
Dinner at 8 is the one that most people know him
Yes.
from because TCM shows it a lot.
Because he's the romantic boyfriend of Madge
but he's
Evans.
like the last credited. Of all these famous people who are in it, he gets the final credit. I'm sorry, she's throwing him over for John Barrymore. No offense to John Barrymore at all. Come on. You know, I mean, just look at him,
Look
you
at
know.
him. And another one I loved, I think we have to mention, he played Pip.
In Great Expectations, 1934.
I just think it's interesting that there's a lot of things that he did first.
Yes.
And you never see his version
Like
of
An
it.
American Tragedy.
Tragedy
Yes, you're
and
right.
that. The thing is, his movies were doing well. And then they put him in Nana.
With Anna Sten.
Which a lot of people
Anna
called
Sten.
her Anna Stench.
They thought she would be another Garbo.
And she was not
No,
another
she
Garbo.
was not.
And that really kind of shifted his career
Yes,
in another
he
direction.
started things that he didn't do well. They stopped offering him roles that he wanted to do. His final role, which I have seen, is in General Spanky,
That's
which
right.
is Spanky and Our Gang.
Seen
Their
that, yes.
feature film. He's adorable. What
is.
can I tell you?
Yeah.
But he just decided that it wasn't happening for him in Hollywood. And since he was also a Canadian citizen, he went over to England and he did a couple of films there and he did some theater. But because he was in England, this was 41, England was being bombarded by the Nazis.
Yeah.
And he saw what was going on and he couldn't tolerate it. Whereas in America was still living in a bubble at that time.
Right.
So he decided to join the Canadian Air Force. He talks about the fact that, I'm backtracking, that he mentioned the kind of women he liked were, he didn't like sports. He didn't want to exert himself. He just wanted to lay on the sand, but he did like to fly. He liked women who were athletic and tan.
Well, speaking of that, can we talk about May Clark?
The Scandal.
Yeah, it was 1933, and they were in a car together, and I guess he was drunk. He ran into a tree, and it broke her jaw. And so the film that she was in, which was supposed to make her a star, which I don't think it made the woman who replaced her a star either, but she was devastated, and it really did kind of shift her career.
And for people who don't know May Clark, she's most famous as the woman who receives the grapefruit in the face, compliments of James Cagney, in the 1931 film The Public Enemy.
So she sued him for like $21,000, which in today's money is about $500,000.
Yeah.
But he agreed to pay for her medical expenses, so she dropped the suit.
Sadly, his life was cut tragically short.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what happened?
As I was mentioning, he went into the Canadian Air Force to fight the Nazis, and he knew how to fly, but they had to go through like basic Canadian Air Force training, and they had put them on, they were going to their first assignment, put them on a plane, and they had a collision with another plane and killed everyone else.
So
and
sad.
Rafe, his brother, was also in the Canadian Air Force, and he brought the casket home. And Phillips actually had his funeral at St. Patrick's Cathedral. That's how big the Holmes
Sure.
family was in New York.
Yes.
And they had an apartment on East 66, but that's how it ended for him.
So sad.
Let's talk about Madeline
Oh,
Taylor
okay.
Holmes, the second born child, their only daughter.
Right.
What can you tell us about her and
She
her career?
doesn't seem to have done much before she was in her 40s.
Yeah, I noticed that
she's,
too.
Yeah, she's a character, very much character actor. Looked like her dad.
I always love those kinds of stories where someone becomes famous later in life.
Yes. I don't know whether she was born Madeline Taylor Holmes or just Madeline Holmes. She might have been, but I'm sure just like Creighton Chaney becoming Lon Chaney Jr.,
Yes.
it doesn't hurt. So it seems like Madeline, I couldn't find find anything much before 1950 that she did. I saw her on Zorro. She played women who were Hispanic. She played women who were Native American. She was on the Loretta Young show. She was the neighbor lady and Zorro. In those days, the first 5 characters got credits and then the rest didn't get credits. And she was like prominent in like 3 episodes. It was a storyline that was carrying through. She never got a credit. So if you look on IMDb, it says uncredited. And I thought, uncredited? What did she do? Hold up a sign? You know, I mean, yeah, seriously. Film-wise, it's interesting. She did Fatso, quite good in that. I saw that.
Is it Dom DeLuise?
Yes, Dom DeLuise.
He was so good.
And directed by Anne Bancroft. And she played a nurse with him, was very good. Her most famous role that everybody thinks, if you say her name, nobody knows who I'm talking about. If I say she's Granny Hawkins in The Outlaw Josie Wales.
Yes, everyone knows that.
Yes.
Such a distinctive character.
And it's like one scene.
Yeah, one scene.
But she was quite elderly at the time.
Yeah.
She's probably not any older than I am. If you go on YouTube, there is a short documentary called Eastwood in Action.
Yes.
And it shows him, because he's like directing his first film, shows him directing Josie Wales, and he's actually giving her direction. Now, Madeline, and I was like,
That's so cool.
yeah.
That's very cool.
I love the pipe smoking character she plays.
Yes. The other one I want to talk about real quick is Pumpkinhead.
Yes.
And the reason why I want to mention this is if you look her up as being in Pumpkinhead, they always show the witch. That's not her.
Oh, really?
But if you Google it, they will say it's her. They'll say it's her in the makeup. But if you look closer, it's another actress playing Haggis the Witch. That is not her.
Always thought it was her. Always.
So it was on the other night. I recorded it. She plays the old hill woman. If you blink, you'll miss her. The teenagers come to the house wanting help. She looks through the window really quickly, and then she's sitting in the dining room table not wanting them to come in because of Pumpkinhead, and that's it. That's it. Yeah. So to the actress who's playing Haggis, I have cleared this up. It is not Madeline.
Well, did she ever marry? Did she have children?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't believe she did. She married Victor Osorio, and he was from Colombia. I do know that when she died, her ashes were given to him. Nice. So I don't have any record of a gravesite on her.
Finally, we're going to talk about the baby of the family. And of course, that was their second-born son, Ralph, known as Rafe by his friends and family. So we'll call him Rafe because I like to think that we were friends. He was also an actor, but he stuck more to the stage. What can you tell us about his early life, his career?
I know that he did some small parts on Broadway. They were, G-Man, and you can't take it with you.
It's a very important part.
I know.
Truly is.
I know it is, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was one of the core people. And he did 6 different plays, and he was like in his 20s, and I think they were all small. But when he came out to Hollywood, he really didn't do anything but something called Undersea Kingdom. The second credit is a renaming of Undersea Kingdom.
Okay.
It was a serial, and I forget even the name of the studio that did it. And they sold it under another name in 1966.
And Rafe played the head guard of the Good Atlantans. I think he was actually, in some ways, more famous for his personal life than on screen or stage.
Yeah.
He married a woman, actress, singer named Libby Holman.
She was dating Phillips.
Yes, that's right.
And they had a lot of arguments.
I bet they did.
And Phillips drank a little bit too much. And so she basically started seeing Rafe behind Phillips's back.
Oh, my.
And actually told Phillips to leave, and he was heartbroken. And then she goes and marries his brother, Rafe. Rafe was her second husband. Her first one was Smith Reynolds.
Let's get into it a little bit. What happened to Smith Reynolds, and do you think she was involved?
Society at large thought she was involved.
And what happened?
And this is her first husband,
This is
just to
her first
clarify.
husband.
He pursued her. She didn't want to marry him. She had a relationship with a woman, the DuPont heiress, which carried through her whole life. But Smith Reynolds followed her around, followed them around. Finally, she kind of fell for him and his money because she came from a poor family in Ohio. They had started out well, but then the stock market took him out. So she married him, but she wasn't really into it. But he was very jealous. And there was a party, and everybody was getting debauched and drunk. At some point, they had an argument upstairs, she and Smith, and then a gun went off. And she claims she doesn't remember anything. She claims...
How convenient.
Well, to the end of her life, she actually agonized over it.
Oh.
She wondered if she did kill him.
Oh, wow.
But she didn't remember doing it.
Yeah.
And she was also having an affair with his best friend named Ab. So Ab and Libby were basically charged with his murder, but they couldn't prove it. And then what happened is found out that she was pregnant. And she was pregnant with Smith Reynolds' child. And so the Reynolds family didn't want the scandal, but it was as big as like the OJ trial was now.
The Reynolds family, if I'm not mistaken, they're the tobacco bazillionaires.
Yes. She had kind of left showbiz. She was quite the torch singer in New York. Her friends called her like this. Everything she touched died.
And that really was true in terms of her relationship then with Rafe. Can you talk about that?
Correct, yes. So anyway, they got off. They didn't end up charging them. She had the baby. Christopher, they called him Topper. So then she married Rafe. But he and Phillips maintained closeness. And so they went off to the Canadian Air Force. Then Phillips died. He brought him home. And then he wanted to keep fighting, so he joined the Army Air Force. And then when he came back, I've read different accounts. But what I can tell, because if you look at the time when he came back and when he actually left us, he was depressed. He was drinking. He got fat.
And Libby was not necessarily as infatuated with him.
At all. Right. She had moved on.
She was kind of done.
Yeah.
And he was
she
still in love
done.
with her.
Yes.
Libby
At
had a
one
roving
point-
eye from what I've
Yeah.
read.
Well, she liked him young. Smith Reynolds was 9 years younger. Phillips was 5 years younger. And Rafe was 11 years younger. And she liked sweet, gentle boys. So he went into New York to that apartment on East 66 that the parents had and killed himself. He took too many sleeping pills. And he was there for a week. And it was Taylor who found him. Taylor found him.
Yeah.
And they tried to get a hold of Libby, but they couldn't find her anywhere. She was living in Connecticut. She had this estate called Treetops. And then shortly, if you look at when she starts up with Montgomery Clift, it's very quickly after he dies, after Rafe dies.
Yes. She did not mourn for too long.
She felt that that Montgomery Clift was the love of her life. Other than this woman that she had, the DuPont heiress, she had a relationship with two women who also had very tragic ends. Everybody who messed with her had really tragic ends.
And I'm sure that William Holden was probably very happy that Libby hooked up with Montgomery Clift.
Right, because she did not want him to take the part in Sunset Boulevard
That's right.
because it was too close to home.
She's the one who kind of talked him out of it.
She absolutely talked him out of it, as far as I can tell.
When you really look at your family's history and the part they played in old Hollywood, I mean, it's such a gothic, brilliant,
Really is.
tragic, wonderful, twisty tale.
Well, that's what you can understand then that my father, with his parents, came to Hollywood when my father was 17, and he looked like Errol Flynn. They offered him a screen test, and his parents, he was 17, refused. They said that was no kind of life.
What do you think is the legacy left behind by the Holmes family, and how do you want your family to be remembered?
I was talking to somebody under 30, and I mentioned Bob Hope. They didn't know who he was.
That kills me.
Yes, and I know, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Bob Hope will ever be forgotten. But I do think that there are really valuable people in the arts for whatever reason. And Taylor certainly made his mark as a character actor. He's certainly
Absolutely.
somebody who could be looked at as a beacon. And there are a lot of actors that do a lot of important work, even now, that you don't necessarily know who they are, but it doesn't discredit their work.
We're so happy to have you
Thank
here.
you so
thank
much,
you.
Thank
Michelle.
you for coming and sharing about your family, because we love bringing to our listeners maybe people they aren't as familiar with.
Yes.
But they're important. And
Or
that's
they
why
may
it
have
was-
seen them but not known their name.
Exactly.
Or, though Phillips seems to have this little cachet of people that still love him.
Yeah, I think he has a following still.
Yes, he
Yeah.
does on Facebook, because he was just so bloody beautiful.
He
You know,
was.
he really was good looking, as is my brother Gary.
Steve, I think it's time to remind our listeners of this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
And the pop quiz question to remind you was that Taylor Holmes' final film role was the voice of King Stephen in the animated classic Sleeping Beauty, 1959, but he was actually a last-minute replacement. Who did he replace and why? Do we know?
I don't know.
It's good.
know.
It's good. Well, after recording demo dialogue for the role, the director ultimately decided that actor Hans Conried was not right for the role because he sounded too much like the character of King Hubert, who was voiced by Bill Thompson. So, in the very last minute, Conried was out and Taylor Holmes was in.
And that was his final role.
Yes,
And he
it
died
was.
a couple of months later.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Taylor and Edna are actually buried out here in Culver City.
Holy Cross, yes.
Culver
yes.
City.
I love that cemetery.
The two boys buried in New York, and then Madeline, her ashes went to her husband, and when he died, who knows?
Who knows?
Well, thanks again, Michelle, for being
thank
here.
you for asking me. I feel really honored.
It is our honor to have you.
It truly
Yeah.
is. And listeners, thank you for spending this time with us. We would love it if you would follow follow us on social media. Our handle is @FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. You can also watch the podcast on YouTube. And if you do that, give us a thumbs up and please subscribe.
And we love your emails, so keep them coming. You can email us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com.
That's this week's view.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Ann McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, and tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. Associate producer and researcher John Price Ritchie. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. That's a wrap.